Dr. Vincent Key out here in Surprise, Arizona. We're here today with Ryan Stoneberg, our head strength and conditioning coach. Ryan, great to be here today.
Great to be here with you.
All right. I want to talk to people out there a little bit about kind of what Ryan does in terms of the strength and conditioning stuff that he does for the Kansas City Royals. But we want to break it into parts. And the first part, Ryan, is when the players are at the end of the season, what type of things, evaluations, do you give for them for the offseason?
Well, one of the things about baseball that people really need to understand is that it's a one-side dominant skill sport. Typically you're throwing and you're hitting one side only, and those movement patterns over the course of 6 to 7 months cause a tremendous amount of imbalances within the body. Now, you can have some imbalance and still do well in your sport, but over time, those imbalances can create some soreness and injury within the body. When the season's over, it's an unbelievable opportunity for those guys to put the glove, the bat, the ball down and go home and restore some symmetry to the body. So sometimes people will recommend to athletes, hey, just go take a prolonged period of rest. I'm not a big proponent of that. I think that tremendous amount of inactivity it slows down the recovery process. I want guys to go home, maybe they take a week off, maybe they go on vacation with their family after a long season where you only get so many off days. If they have the ability to go on a cruise, go on a vacation with their family, hey, that's great, but you need to start resuming some general activity, stretching, light activity, just to try and restore some balance from the left to the right, to the front, to the back, and get the body going so that intense training down the road is easier to handle. Now, obviously, we look at each individual and recognize their deficiencies and make recommendations, but the key for me is obviously the sooner they can get the body going and put all the baseball activity aside, the better off they're going to be in the long run.
So throttle down, but just don't shut it off.
Exactly. The people who, you take all these imbalances that you've created over the season, and then you couple that with inactivity, it's going to be even harder to get going down the road. Plus, you've done nothing to really take care of those imbalances.
Okay. So as they're going in their offseason, like you said, they throttle down, they don't really shut it off. And as they're going into their spring training, then what's that regimen, or does that regimen just intensify? Does it stay the same? Does it change?
Well, in the middle of the offseason, there comes a time where these guys have to resume some of their baseball skills. I mean, that's what they're here for. They're here to play baseball. So the last thing you want to do is come into camp and you've neglected throwing and hitting and running. You want to make sure that those skills are somewhat sharpened so that when spring training rolls around, you feel like you're able to get the most out of spring training. So as the skills start to ramp up, their physical activity is going to come down just a little bit. Now, when spring training rolls around, the baseball activity goes way up.
Right.
And so what we have to do is be smart and take the physical activity down a notch as well. So we're still training. These guys aren't going out in spring training games and playing, 7 innings out of the chute.
Right.
Typically, they're going to play a game, maybe 4 or 5 innings, get a couple at-bats, maybe the next day play the same amount, right. And over the course of spring training, they ramp themselves up to where they're ready to go on day one of the season and play 9 innings every day. Because they're not playing a full 9 innings, well, we're able to still do some good training with them.
Right.
And when it comes to pitchers, we're just making sure that any and all work that we do with them correlates to their throwing schedules.
Okay, well, perfect. And so once they get through spring training into the season, when the real bullets fly, if you will, then how do you manage them throughout the course of the season?
Well, baseball's a grind. What I like to say is that no matter what, you're constantly dealing with fatigue. Fatigue is always present. The flights, the long days, the lack of off days, the inconsistent meals, sleeping in different beds. There's all sorts of other things. Sometimes you have extra inning games, and then you got to wake up the next day and play another game. Sometimes, you're playing double headers. Then you're also having to take into consideration the weather. I mean, you're playing outside every day. It's not like the NBA or the NHL where it's climate controlled.
Right.
You can have stretches during the season where
it's frigid.
It's 95 degrees for 2 months in a row. So fatigue is always present. We have to be mindful that they're there to play baseball, and anything we do for them is to support them and to make it to where they can go out there and perform at a high level. So we have to be very cognizant of the volume of work that we do with them. Mm-hmm. Short, quick hits of work. Come in, remind your body that it's strong, and then make sure that you have everything you need to be effective during the game. So, we maintain intensity, we maintain consistency, but volume has to be much lower.
Okay, and being efficient, like you said, with your work.
Exactly.
So you're not wasting time, and, be efficient, get in, get out, get your work in.
Yes, and over the course of 6 months, if you're consistent with your work and you're maintaining intensity, you're going to maintain strength. There's not a lot of guys who take themselves to another level during the season, but it's possible with that consistent, intense work to maintain your strength over the course of a season. And you may see guys slip just a little bit, but if you are in a position to make the postseason, you want your body to be in a position to where it's at its best, or at least it's close to its best, so that if you do get a chance to chase a ring, you feel like you can give it a good shot.
Right. So transitioning from there to, let's say, the youth athletes, the middle school kids, high school kids, things of that nature, they usually start in January if they're not playing a winter sport, whether it be basketball or wrestling or whatnot. So what would be your advice to give to those kids in terms of their ramp up going into their spring season, and ultimately most kids play into the summer?
Well, I'll work backwards just a little bit. I think, to me, one of the most important things that youth athletes can do is play multiple sports.
Right.
I think when you specialize at such a young age, I don't think you're giving yourself that opportunity to play these different sports, which have different energy systems, different movement patterns, different skills, and really create that well-rounded athlete. Baseball is a predominant skill sport, and while there are opportunities to display athleticism, it's not the same as basketball, football, soccer, where you're constantly moving around, changing direction, running, planting, cutting. It's different. Now, like I said, there are opportunities, they're just rare. Relative to the other sports. So if kids can go out there and play those other sports and, prepare their bodies for baseball and bring that to the table, I think they're going to be much better off. The youth athletes, I see a lot of individuals that are going out and training, and they're seeing that individuals at higher levels are transforming their bodies and they're getting stronger and bigger. If you're going to do so, what's the goal? Is the goal to train for appearance? Is it to train for function? You want the body to move well. So flexibility, mobility is imperative. If you are gaining strength, but it comes at the cost of flexibility, you're just reducing the amount of functional strength that you truly have. I use analogies all the time. I'm like, imagine a bow and arrow, and if you pull it halfway back, the arrow might go, but what if you pull it all the way back? I mean, seriously, when you take the muscles of the body and you start reducing the length, you're just reducing the power potential. So we want to see guys maintain range of motion, build functional strength, be as athletic as possible. Those young athletes learning healthy eating habits. And then, let's be real. It truly is a skill sport. So if you're not out there practicing those skills and taking advantage of the coaching that you have and making sure that those skills are refined, you're probably not going to get the most out of your sport.
And you see some of the kids at the middle school, high school level in terms of lifting, they're all afraid, because there's a lot of baseball coaches that just say, don't lift. Don't lift. But like you said, lifting's okay, but it's not at a price in terms of their flexibility, because they just think, okay, well, I'll just go in the weight room and lift, and then all of a sudden they're just tight, and they can't move, like you said.
You know, I told the team a quote this year in a in the preseason meeting, and it resonated a lot with me. I said, the quote is basically, people think lifting weights is dangerous. Well, try being weak.
Right.
Being weak is dangerous.
Right.
So you can go into a weight room, and it can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, if you have poor coaching. But if you're going to try to endure the rigors of a professional schedule, hell, even a collegiate schedule, you need to have the durability, and that durability requires strength. To produce those forces, to decelerate those forces, and repeat those forces over and over and over again. You may have great skill patterns, throwing, hitting, but if you're not able to repeat them over and over and over again on the big stage, how valuable are you? So I think a lot of that comes with strength, and you need to be smart about it. You need to have people that understand how to get into a weight room, how to perform the movements safely, what movements to perform, period, and how to maintain range of motion throughout the process.
Okay. Well, good. I think those are all really good things that a lot of youth athletes need to hear, because, like I said, there's a lot of myths out there, there's a lot of misconceptions, and then just trying to get to the truth, or as I say, just trying to get to the real. So, hey, tomorrow we'll be talking hopefully with Dr. Bruce Tobey, our chairman of orthopedics. Ryan, thank you very, very much for joining us today, and you guys just stay tuned.